Hello and welcome to the Roll and Reflect podcast, the podcast where we bring you insights from behind the tabletop and beyond the box. I'm one of your hosts, Devon.
And I'm Mark.
And we have a very exciting conversation about one of Mark's favorite games of all time. But before we do, we have a special reflection question we would like you all to answer in the comments below. So take it away, Sean of Mayfair Games.
Top 5 movie villains.
Top 5 movie villains. This is such a fun question to answer.
I love it. I love that Sean did this. He's such a good guy. So, and my list, I have to say that I really wanted to pull villains from everywhere, right? So I was a stretch to incorporate some comic book ones that maybe aren't so great in the movies, but I love them as villains.
Well, why don't you go ahead and give us let's do number 5 first.
Yep,
go
number
5
I'm gonna start off with Loki because I absolutely love his attitude.
Yes,
he's a lovable villain, right? You want to hate him, but you just can't. Right.
I do really like Loki. I hated Loki originally. And then after watching him more and more, I started enjoying that character arc.
Yes, right.
And it's like, yeah, that's what you're saying. Like, you love to hate him, but you can't really hate him at the same time. It's like your little brother almost.
Yeah, and definitely bridging like from the comic books, the movie version of Loki, I definitely prefer. So it's just really, really fun, really well done, and just truly, I'm almost like a chaotic evil, right? He's not. Sometimes I'm evil, but usually. Yeah. Well, usually I'm evil. Sometimes I'm good.
Side note, did you like the TV show? The Marvel show?
I definitely did. Yep.
I actually really enjoyed the Loki show.
Yeah, that was fantastic. I would watch any movie with him portraying as Loki because I enjoy, even if the story was he just makes the story that much better.
That is Loki. My number 5 is going to be Randall Boggs from Monsters, Inc.
Yes.
I love animated TV, animated shows, movies. And Randall is just one of those characters where you just don't like him. But his character, like design and everything and the story is really cool.
Yep.
And he does a good job like being the villain in those movies.
Big time.
But it's almost like you still kind of don't hate him again. I don't know. There's something about it. It's a creepy character, but also lovable at the same time.
Oh, yeah, it's definitely.
Strange. So that's my number 5.
And those, in general, those animated films, have some of the most quirky, fun villains, right?
Right. So, it's really hard to hate them.
Yeah. All right. My number 4 is the Terminator. Straight up, relentless, unstoppable.
I would be back.
And in some way, some fashion, I'm referencing the Terminator and Skynet almost weekly.
Oh, yeah.
Especially with all the new AI things going on.
Yep.
It's always top of mind in some way. So it's like this ever-present villain in my, fandom world. So.
Yeah, the Terminator is one that I didn't get super into the movies, but I really love that character. That's such a cool character.
That's how they have him flip, right? They reprogram him and stuff, but he's still very much the Terminator. Like, what do you mean I can't, destroy these people?
Destroy everyone.
Exactly.
Well, my number 4 is going to be another animated. You're going to see a lot of this here. And this is Yzma from Emperor's New Groove. Man, I did not like that character. I hated that character so much in the films. And Kronk is kind of one of those weird side characters that I actually really liked.
I would have picked Kronk, actually, right? Because he's awesome.
I like Kronk better, but I think Yzma's the better villain.
Oh,
Kronk, I don't necessarily consider like a villain as much as he is just kind of the hilarity, the side action.
He's more of like, I guess I'll be a villain.
Right. Yzma's just one of those where as soon as she pulled the vial out, I'm just like, oh, you better not poison. You're going to do it. And it was just like, ugh. So Yzma's my number 4.
Yeah, she totally gives off like Cruella de Vil vibe.
Yeah, very much so.
Time, right? Yeah. All right, so for my number 3, I'm going with Alien from the Alien franchise movies and so forth. So just, again, another unstoppable type of villain. That's
so creepy to look at, too.
So creepy and just this huge hive mind kind of grouping of villains within there, right? So they're just relentless. Again, is one of the things I love about terrible villains is that it's like every turn, you can't get much worse than this. Oh, it gets worse.
It always gets worse with villains.
So I love that. And I don't really love all the movies, sadly. I wish they'd been all better. Obviously, the first
they're hit or
two,
miss very much.
Yeah, they're hit or miss. The first two are dead on. I just fantastic. Love those. But I love the mythology of the story. And like, I have several audiobooks too that I listen to while walking or hiking. And there's some really great ones that are radio drama, right, that they did. So it's like 2 or 3 hours worth of stuff. And there's one in particular takes place between the first and second movie where Ripley wakes up and she doesn't remember in the second movie that any of this happened. So there's a whole, adventure that happens in between the movies, which is so good.
That's kind of cool.
And I thought for sure they got Sigourney Weaver to do the voice for that one, but no, they had some voice actress, and it just is dead
matched
on.
perfectly.
Matched perfectly. So Out of the Shadows, I believe, is that one. But Alien, just that franchise, I love those villains, and even the crossover they happen to do with like Predators and stuff. So I mean, they're the ultimate back and forth with both of those. So yeah, Alien.
It's awesome. My number 3 is going to be Immortan Joe, actually, from Mad Max Fury Road. It's one of those villains where very quiet. Right? You don't see a lot of the action. The visual of that character just creeps me out.
Yeah.
Like, it's kind of really intense to look at, and you just know something bad is going to happen as soon as you see just the weirdness of all of it.
Sure.
And then, the whole witness me thing, and it's kind of like he is the ruler. And so I really am fascinated by that character. I don't know why. It's just something about it.
Yeah, you know that he was in Road Warrior too, right? I mean,
I haven't seen Road Warrior.
So he's not all dulled up like you know him in the new movie.
Okay.
So he's just normal. He kind of gives you this like Rooster vibe.
Oh.
He's a super wacky villain where he comes from to where you see him in the new movies.
Interesting.
Right?
Okay.
So definitely at least go look at some clips and get an idea of what this is. It's pretty interesting.
It's still my number 3 for now, but it might change after that. So,
well, my number 2, and I know people are going to say, well, the movie version of this villain is not so great. And I have to fully agree. But I just love this villain in general, Galactus, because again, he's on this giant universal scale of unstoppable.
Yeah.
He devours planets, and he's got his sidekicks like the Silver Surfer and such. And one of my favorite Galactus moments ever, and it's not movie related, so it's a little off the topic, but is in the Secret War comics where Hulk and him have this Hulk and him have this interaction where Hulk leaps up and knocks him on his butt. Just knocks Galactus down. Galactus. It's so good.
Wow.
I love it. I remember as a kid jumping off the couch going, no way.
Did that happen? Wow.
That was so awesome. But yeah, I just think Galactus is a phenomenal type of villain and a whole different scale level of villain.
Nice. Yeah, I think in a future one we'll have to do like the side characters, because I think Silver Surfer is one of my favorite side characters.
He's so great.
So really cool to talk about there. But my number 2 is gonna creep y'all out a little bit. It's actually Jigsaw from the Saw movies.
Wow. I didn't realize you were a fan.
I love the Saw movies.
Wow.
It's really funny because some people online are like, wait, you have a dark side to you a little bit? And I'm like, yeah, I'm not always happy-go-lucky. Like, right. I love those kind of films too. When I first saw the movie, see what I did there? I was immediately just like, anything with like a doll freaks me out already. And then it was like a Chucky doll, but on a tricycle, just walking in. And I'm just like, and it's not necessarily Saw like the character, like the actual human, but it's just that doll character, that I was just immediately freaking out inside. I was like, something bad is going to happen. In the beginning of the scenes where it's just dark and all you hear are the squeaking of the wheels, that just immediately gets my hair, on my arms up, because it's just so creepy. So I love Jigsaw.
I'm very surprised by that one for you. I mean, are you generally a horror movie fan, or is it just those movies?
I'm not much of a horror film guy, but like those like gore style, dumb gore films, I do really enjoy those. Interesting, I know, not what you thought, but hey, that's why we're doing this, to learn more about us, right?
Right, exactly.
So that's my number 2.
So my number 1 is probably no surprise to anyone. I had to go with Darth Vader, as Star Wars is like still one of my all-time. I mean, as a kid, I saw the original movie in the theater over 100 times.
Yeah, that's insane.
So it's pretty ingrained in me, and I love the different paths with Vader and some of the different books and other things that have come out. just about him in general and just how powerful. Like you see him in a video game and he's just dominating everything, right? So, and in Rogue One at the end, and you see what he's really like with full on force and everything. So powerful. And again, one of the things with my villains in general here is that they're just kind of unstoppable. So
in Rogue One, that was such a cool scene. It's like, what? There's power in there.
I know. It was amazing. So yeah, it's gonna be Darth Vader again, because the Star Wars thing is just so ingrained in me for my entire life.
Yeah, I think again I'm on the outlier where I like Darth Vader, don't get me wrong, but I actually like Darth Maul better. Not necessarily the story, because there's not a whole lot of story, but just the character design and like the sword and everything.
In the animated series, there's a lot of Darth Maul.
I haven't had time for the animated series.
There's this fantastic Darth Maul sequence with old Obi-Wan and him, and they do this whole samurai like standoff,
like
and
dueling kind of thing,
run off at each other. You have to at least go look up that clip because it's so good. But yeah, he basically, in the extended story, he survived because the bottom half of him is now robotic. So that's how he's still alive.
That's sweet. Cyborg Maul.
Yeah.
Well, my number one, again, speaking of darkness, we're going to talk about the Joker. Yeah. Played specifically by Heath Ledger.
Okay.
Not necessarily the Joker in itself, but Heath Ledger's Joker creeped me out so much. And I just think that acting was so phenomenal. Unfortunately, it cost him his life because of it. Sadly. But I think that's why that character works so well, because it was just, Heath was just all in on the Joker. I was watching videos on the cast working with him on this, and they were just like, he was in character at all times. And so it was hard to even talk to Heath because it wasn't Heath, it was the Joker.
Right.
And so unfortunately, it literally took him over, that character did. But the character played there was so phenomenal. Every scene in that movie was amazing. Definitely my favorite Batman movie.
That's and I believe, if I remember correctly, the scene where he's coming out of the hospital and he's hitting the plunger, it was all kind of ad lib because it didn't fire off right away.
Yeah,
it didn't work, and so him doing the repeated clicking was pretty well done. So
so the Joker
that would definitely be in line with like the Joker in general. Now it's very interesting. So it's hard for me because he's a fantastic Joker. I feel like Mark Hamill has fully embodied the real Joker from the comic books into cartoons, and just him with Kevin Conroy combined as Batman. The two of them together just pull off that pairing like the best ever. I don't know if there will ever be that good for me.
Well, let's just throw out some honorable mentions here. I had a single one. I had Hades from Hercules. A very like underrated villain in my opinion. It's kind of like if you think Ursula, it's very similar in that reign where it's like, oh, they're really bad villains, but they're kind of not talked about as much as some of the other ones, like yours, for example, Scar.
Yeah, the thing I love about Scar is that he's all like, well, I guess, he's all kind of,
I guess I can do that.
Yeah, he has kind of this, even though he's evil, he's got kind of this Eeyore quality to him,
You heard it here first. Scar is Eeyore.
Yep, exactly. I love how he just kind of plops onto the ground and he's like, it's so terrible.
Simba.
I got to give it up for Hans Gruber.
Hans
falling
Gruber.
from Nakatomi Plaza. Just a fantastic villain. And
Yippee-ki-yay.
Yippee-ki-yay. And just his whole presence from that movie, right? I mean, that portrayal of Hans Gruber for him just made that movie, I feel like. Obviously, Bruce Willis was awesome, but he carried a lot of the drama in the movie and so forth. So he was a fantastic and just this like slick kind of villain, right? So I've Hans Gruber for sure.
So the real question though that everyone's wondering, is it a Christmas movie?
Yes. They even reference it goes to a Christmas party.
Fire on all cylinders in the comments.
Right.
No, I also agree with you. I think it's a Christmas movie. So
and they played Christmas music throughout.
Exactly. That was a fun top 5 villains. What are your top 5 villains? Let us know in the comments below. But let's get to our main topic today.
That might have been, I think that might have been one of my favorite reflection questions.
Far.
It was just so fun.
We'll get more like that in the future for sure. So our main topic today, we're going to be talking about The Return to Dark Tower. That is one of Mark's favorite games. And we're not just going to talk about the game, but specifically like the innovation, what the game brings with the app-driven, all that. Mark, what is Return to Dark Tower and who publishes it? Give us some insight.
First and foremost, Restoration Games brought this game back, so to say, but it is a sequel to the original game, which I never had as a kid. I had friends who had it. I wanted it so bad. It was definitely like, if I had a Grail game, this would be it. And now that this new Return to Dark Tower is out, I'm pretty happy with just having that. But it for me as a kid, oh my gosh, and I was a D&D kid for sure. And so this was just like, I have to have this, and it never happened.
Yeah.
So, and it was only a year or two that it was available. So, every birthday, every Christmas, nope, not it.
Oh.
It was kind of like the Red Ryder BB gun for me.
The sad Christmas. You didn't get what you wanted.
So, and I love the theming around this new one where I'm just going to dive into the theme. Return to Dark Tower immerses players in a dark fantasy world where heroes must work together to prevent an ancient evil from rising again. The game revolves around the Dark Tower, a malevolent structure that has reawakened, spreading corruption and summoning monstrous foes. You must embark on a quest, gather resources, and confront the tower's challenges to ultimately seal away the darkness and save your realm. So epic in that alone.
But there's no dice chucking, Mark.
No, which is amazing for me, right? Well, that's not entirely. There is one dice.
Yeah.
Which I love the push your luck element there for sure. So
yeah, one thing I'm like not as familiar with this game as you are, but I played it a few times, and each of those times I love the cooperative nature of the game because it's one of those where I didn't necessarily need to know all of the story, all the characters. Right. I was able to just jump in and work with other people to play the game. And then of course, when I saw that tower and I realized it wasn't just a tower, it did some crazy things with the app. And I was just like blown away by it. And it's one of those games where I wouldn't necessarily purchase myself, but I will happily play with anyone who asks.
Yeah, and for me, as soon as it was available, I just went all in and backed the entire thing. And I'm like, even if my family doesn't like it, I'm getting it. It doesn't matter. And so I said when it did arrive, I said, let's play this. And like, they're all right. And so we sat down and then we played it again and again, like 4 times that one night.
Wow.
And now it's still the number one requested game by my family. Are we going to play Dark Tower?
That's amazing.
Tonight? So it's and with the app integration, the original game had these terrible buttons on the tower itself that admittedly didn't always work. So, but I still loved it as a kid, but there's no comparison to this new one at all. I mean, the way the app integration works, and in general, a lot of people are pretty down on apps in board games and so forth, but this one fully makes sense, and it is integrated so well that you feel immersed into the game. You don't feel like you're stepping out every time you go into the app. So
it saves some upkeep. Like I really think that's super
huge
helpful.
amount.
And like for me with the whole app thing, that's a whole conversation in itself. But I think when games like this, where using the app to save upkeep, to save time and make you actually play the game is a really good thing. And I think this app is extremely well done. Yes. And it has like, it has some music in the background. It gives you the sounds of the characters, which I think is awesome. But speaking of like the mechanisms of the game, like, because did you play the original game then, or you didn't?
Yeah, but it's been so long.
Okay,
I can't really remember all because I played it last time I played the original game was like in the 80s. So
okay,
I only have a general vibe of it now. I know that there's no way I would go back. If someone said, "Oh, we'll give you a copy," sure. I don't know if I'll ever play it, but yeah, no. The way this app, and the thing with the app too is that we throw it up on the big screen. So everyone can see what's happening, even if you're not the one diving into a dungeon or fighting a monster or whatever it is. Everyone can see what's happening, so everyone stays engaged, which is something I really like to do in general for apps in games anyway. But This one, because everyone's very on the edge of their seat about, are you going to make it through this dungeon, or are you going to battle the creature or the monstrous villain at the end? But not only that, though, the app actually integrates into the tower itself. The tower is not just a centerpiece for the game. It actually does things, and it prevents you from things and drops skulls, which are deadly.
One of the coolest parts.
One of the coolest parts. And you have that sense of tension when the tower awakens and starts to spin and then spit out. It's
actually
like, oh my gosh.
Spin.
And you get those moments too where you've been dropping skulls in for a while and nothing has happened yet, and now you're like, oh no, it's turning, and like just dumps
everything
bunch of
dumps. Do you want to give our listeners a little bit of like how the game plays, an overview?
Yeah, the interesting thing about this game is that there's many ways the game can play. I mean, there's some basic things that you will always do, but based on the monster that you're fighting will radically change up how the game plays. Like if you're I can't think of the creatures' names, but there are elements in the game that will turn the rivers to fire, and that's not true in every game, right? So there's elemental effects that happen based on the different creatures and different types of things that can go on. But in general, you're moving around trying to do upkeep to get rid of skulls off of buildings, because once you run out of skulls or too many building, you're done. The game's over. And also corruption is the other way that you're going to lose the game. You know, you fail to do something, you go up against a monster and you get beat down, and you've got 2 corruption, you get a 3rd, and then we all lose. So those are the basics around that. But the game in general, you start off with your character and you have your banner phase, which you want to take advantage of, because generally you're going to get like spirit or something to go. So spirit and warriors are kind of your 2 main tokens. Your main currency to help stave off terrible things is warriors and spirit. So you'll do that, and then you've got your basic actions like moving around and doing various things. And I love that you can split up the movement. So you can move one space, you can do a heroic action like cleansing a building with skulls on it, and you'll put those off to the supply. And then there's other things you can do, and you have either or options on a lot of these, like or you can spend a spirit to get 6 more warriors, so you get a total of 12 warriors but there's free actions too. So I love all that aspect as well. So it's really about you gearing up, because you do need to gear up for that end phase. But through the course of that, you're playing through months. And the first month is everyone gets 1 turn, but then based on player count, each subsequent month will have a varied number of rounds through it. So you need to get through the month and do the main core things. Like there are objectives that you have to fulfill within each of the months. Or potentially bad things can happen, but maybe that's okay. Maybe you need to let this one objective go to fulfill this other one instead. So it's all building up to the final clash at the end.
The big boss.
And you have so many options to be able to, and I love the table talk at the game. You're like, oh, if I move over here, and then on your turn you come over and you pick up these items for me, then you can go off into the dungeon and have all these advantages. And one of the key things about the game is having advantage. So when you go into a dungeon, or when you fight a creature, or you're trying to fulfill whatever the requirements of the objective are, you have advantages. So you can apply them to the cards that are trying to wreck you. Like, oh, you need to spend 24 warriors. You're like, oh, no, I don't. I've got 2 advantages.
That's
and
super
now suddenly
cool.
It's 4 warriors. So things like that too. And you do all that upkeep, like you were saying, in the app to say, hey, I've applied these effects. Now the card is less terrible for me. And so it's this real interesting balancing act, upgrading yourself, but also balancing the creatures and keeping things from getting out of hand, right? So lots of ways to upgrade yourself. So there's gear and items that you can pick up. There's also treasures, and there's potions, all kinds of things that you can add on as you try to make your character bigger and better. And everyone is collectively trying to do this for themselves. But then at the end of the game, you try to arrive in one space and give everybody all the things so they can make the biggest impact against the big baddie at the end. So lots of neat things around this game and how it works, for sure. And some turns might just be you positioning yourself for the next turn, right? It's no big thing went down. But one of the things I enjoy the most is like the dungeon diving. So you like one of the quests might be you have to go and find something in a dungeon. It might be a relic or a special type of gear that you're going to be finding. So you dive in and you've got the app and you're moving through the dungeon and you're like pushing your luck the whole way. And then suddenly you find the thing and it's this big eureka moment, right? I love it so much. But the neat thing about dungeons too is that if you only get so far, you can bail and leave, and then someone else can jump back in and pick up where you left off. So I like that too. And even if the batteries die in your tower, you can pick up the game, you put new batteries in, or even continue playing in 2 days, and the game just picks up.
It still remembers it. Yeah,
still remembers it from the app and everything you're doing. So again, there's so many options available to you, and based on which villains, which select villains that you are fighting against, really is going to change up how you play each time.
Yeah, and I know you discussed the companion app slightly, but can we talk about like the tower and how it brings an innovative piece to this game, and how like the tower is changing the industry just based on what it's doing with the technology?
Yeah, so it's this really, at the end of your turn, you will always drop a skull into the tower. So the app and the tower know that player has ended their turn. So, and with that, there are doors on the tower that will have to be revealed and opened. So as the game progresses, the tower gets more deadly because more options to be dropping skulls on everyone, and it spins, and it will prevent you, not prevent you, but it will slow you down. And some things, like it may prevent you from doing your banner action, but you'll have to pay in order to do something. If one of your other actions, like it may say, oh, you can't cleanse a temple. So, but if you pay a spirit, you can still cleanse, things like that. So it has a lot of icons and movement and sound, and it's a full like sensory game, which is fantastic.
It's another reason why the game gives another cinematic experience. You're going to hear that a lot from us on this podcast, is we really like games with that cinematic experience because we like to be immersed into the gameplay. Right?
I want to be immersed. I do not want to be sitting contemplating how much wheat I should have.
Shots fired.
I love the interaction. I love just experiential type gaming, and that's exactly what this is. And like you said, hugely cinematic. You feel like you are in this world, and your decisions actually have real impact to what's going on.
And I think it's really suspenseful too, because when I was playing, I had no context of the original, so I was just going in pretty blind. But when I saw Tower just light up and start like making sounds, and then it was moving, my eyes just kept getting bigger and bigger. And then as soon as I saw the door that needed to open, I was like, oh, here we go. Lifted the door, and like 4 skulls flew out. And my whole body was just like, what the heck just happened? So it was a really cool moment.
Yeah, it is. And for just the basics of what it does, it's not like super like high end, so to say. It's pretty basic. It spins, it rotates, you open doors, bad things happen.
Yeah.
But the way it does it, though, like you said, is very cinematic, and the music and how it ramps up, like, oh no, something bad's about to happen. The tower awakens is one of the things the app says, and then you hear it wake up, and you're like, oh no.
Yeah, I know a lot of people kind of were complaining about the miniatures in the game. Like, in my opinion, though, I think it's all about the tower. I don't think the miniatures need to be fancy, because the tower is the focus. Yeah,
if you play just the basic game, or the base game, I should say, it has just tokens. You don't even have miniatures.
Okay.
You have to have the Dark Horde, I think is the expansion, that has all the miniatures. So it's not required at all.
Got it.
I mean, the heroes all have miniatures, but have all the monsters and everything going on, which I absolutely love having the miniatures. And if you're going to have all the big miniatures, you got to get the neoprene map, because it makes the world that much bigger to accommodate these monsters and so forth.
And I think earlier you were talking about putting it up on the screen. Yes. I wish I could do that, because I feel like gaming would be such a cooler experience, because you could have that big screen and now you know what's happening, as opposed to this tiny screen where you're clicking warriors and get an advantage.
Exactly. It's just not the same. And the thing about that is that it brings everyone into what you're doing. If you're battling, you're like, oh no, you're like, you should probably use an advantage there.
You probably should, so I don't die.
Yes. And the thing about advantages is that they're somewhat geared towards specifics. So you are fighting a humanoid, or you're going up against an undead, so you might have advantages that are specifically good for undead. So you're the undead guy, someone else might be the humanoid guy, and gearing up to do that just really interesting. But there are wilds as well that work in any situation, and you usually will have some advantages built into your character right away. And that's another thing, you get to upgrade the abilities of your character by spending 5 spirit and getting more of your abilities unlocked. So that, again, that's another thing that you're trying to do through the course of the game while trying to stave off all the terrible things that are happening.
I feel like this is one of those games that my group definitely would enjoy because they're all D&D guys. And so I think with this one, it gives you that RPG feel in a way where it's fully cooperative. So it's like we have a couple players that are really competitive and they only want to win, a couple players that don't care at all, a couple players just want to be there. And I'm just like, okay, so this is a good cooperative game. It gives you that feel of diving into a dungeon with all these epic monsters and the integration of the app. I think it would go really well, I think, with one of my groups.
Everyone we've shown it to, we'll just play the base game and they like, oh, let's play again. So we start to introduce some of the expansions, which make the game just take it to the next level, because you've got several different things. Like the new one is the Covenant, but the original is the Alliance, where you've got various and all of them have new characters, which I love, because every time I play, I should mention that I always try to play a different character because they all work and behave somewhat different. Very asymmetric, yeah. So I love that aspect a lot. And the different types of things, like you've got for the Alliance, you've got alliances and you've got areas that you're trying to protect with a universal currency that you all have, which is a neat thing as well. More companions, which is the thing we haven't talked about. There are companions in the game that you can get, which add to your abilities and your advantages as you're venturing. And I also love the fact that wherever you're sitting at the table is your kingdom. So you've got north, south, east, west.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I do like that aspect.
Area of the map, that's your kingdom. So when bad things happen to your kingdom, you got to be aware of that, because whatever's happening within the story may affect you directly, even if you're not in your kingdom.
Well, speaking of characters and character boards, let's move on to art and graphic design. So there's a little bit of a hot take here, because I think the artwork is just okay. I kind of wish there was more. Like the gameplay does a really good job of integrating you, but I don't feel like there's as much art integrating you into the world. And so I kind of wish there was more, even on the player boards. I can't quite remember, so don't quote me, but I just wanted to see a little bit more to it.
And until you flesh out your character with treasure and gear, which all have really, especially the potions, the artwork for the potions is really cool. So each of the potions do something different, and they have each a very unique look to them and so forth. But again, the treasures add all that art into what you're doing. But yeah, when you first start out, and just in the base game alone, it's pretty just this simple character board with everything. And that's another beautiful thing about it. The character board shows you exactly what is available to you and what you can do in your turn. You don't have to go reference anything really. So I like that. As far as graphic design, that works really well. But you're right, until you start getting more of the gear and treasures and adding onto your character with companions and so forth, the artwork seems like it evolves along with you and your character.
That is a good point. Yeah, I didn't even think about it that way, because the artwork is just you are a character, right? And then you get the board and whatnot, but as you get those cards, that is kind of cool to know, because you stack up and now you're like, oh, now I have this piece of equipment or this companion by my side. And so that's a cool take on that. And you discussed the player boards, and I wrote down the very clean graphics. And we just talked about that in our previous episode, where we love player boards that give you a lot of actions, that you know exactly what you need to do with that player board. So I think they did a really good job with their clean graphics there.
And I love too that all the different areas on the board, all the different buildings you go and visit will do different things based on your different actions and so forth. So you have to go to different places to get more warriors. You go to the market and so forth. There's also, to get more treasure, like I said, go to the market, and then to upgrade your character. I think it's the Citadel, if I remember off the top of my head. So I like that there's different buildings, and in the expansions they have flags also on the buildings that
I think we used the flags in our second game.
Yeah, related to your main building in your kingdom, so to say. So you do the alliance stuff with your particular guild that is on the edge of your board. So adding in those expansions just makes it a next level for the game for sure. And then they have the new expansion, which is relatively new, is the Covenant? Yeah, Covenant. So where you're building these huge like temples and things to the gods to enhance your power and help
That's
you
cool.
out. Now, I've only played that expansion once so far, which you would think I've played it more, but we just haven't had time. But I really enjoyed, and it's one or the other, really. You don't really play the Alliance and the Covenant at the same time, but I don't know. I think I might, obviously it's new. I might like the Covenant a little bit better just because I haven't played it as much. But yeah, I just everything they've done with the game so far, just the immersion, taking you into that world and how you all are actively working together. It's not, again, a game where no one is just sitting there wondering, when is it my turn?
Yeah.
Everyone is actively, everyone is actively working together. So I like that a lot.
Yeah, I have to give a huge shout out to my friend Mark. He was the one that not this Mark, sorry, a different Mark. Yeah. He actually was the one that was all Dark Tower every day. And so when I went up to his place, he was just like, yo, you ever played Dark Tower? And it's like my friend and I's Grail game. You know, it's the best game ever. And we ended up playing, and it was so cool because we had dark lights, and, you know, it was just, it was such an experience, and I really loved it. And now every time I go back there, I feel like we play Dark Tower because that's like our thing when I go up there.
Definitely. It's definitely like a game that has become on Halloween. It's one of the go-to games.
Yeah, and I think this game's currently rated 8.3, I believe, on BGG, so 4.1K ratings. So people really enjoy this game. And of course, we talk about restoration multiple times already throughout this podcast, but they always do a great job of listening to their community. They took the game originally and just recreated it with this masterpiece and incorporated the technology that really made this version sing, this new version. And so I think going back to how has this technology advanced our industry is something I want to talk about a little bit, because I feel like with the app integration alone, that has launched us into a whole new world of things that we can be doing with gaming. With like this small piece of technology with this tower, I think it's really forcing other publishers to step their game up and realize what we can do as an industry to really bring out cool tech.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I'm thinking is going to continue to push forward, right? Is that adding the sights and sounds to the game that just enhance the experience that much more. And, you know, if you're not a cooperative gamer, this may not appeal to you, but everyone I've shown it to has loved it so far. So
yeah, if you're not cooperative and only want to crush your foes, this is probably not the game for you.
However, there is a competitive version, which I have never played.
Really? So there's competitive?
Yeah, in the app, you can pick cooperative or competitive. I've never done the competitive version. So
interesting. I didn't know that.
Now I should try that and see what it's
I feel like you need to try that, and then next time talk about it on the Beyond segment or something.
Yeah, for sure. So
speaking of that segment, we are now going to jump to the Beyond. Add the reverb. I will talk a little bit first because I'm talking all about the innovation and technology.
Yeah.
It brought me back to when I was a child and the introduction to the electronic motors and the Hot Wheels sets.
Yes.
And so I specifically wanted to talk about the Tornado Twister and Shark Bite Bay. Those were, I think the Tornado Twister was the first thing I got for Hot Wheels, and the first take on the electronic motor. And I was blown away. And my dad got it for me, and I was just like, a car goes in and vroom, it pushes itself. I was like, what just happened? That was
amazing
so cool
stuff. I remember that as a kid as well. So many neat things. And they really did some innovating with those toys back then for sure.
Yeah. And then like with the Shark Bite Bay, it was something so small where it wasn't necessarily technology in like the electronics, but it was in that when the car would go past the shark, there was a little notch there that you'd hit the notch and then the shark would fall down and then something else would fall down. It was like, it was such a cool piece of engineering tech. It really forced the Hot Wheels industry to make super cool sets. And nowadays, of course, there's all sorts of crazy stuff that can happen. Yeah. But I thought that was so cool to have an electronic motor.
Which has evolved into like some video games with some neat Hot Wheel video games. Yes. They're pretty crazy and really fun. So in keeping in line with sights and sounds, I thought My Beyond is not board game related, but it is related to kind of that experiential type of gaming, right? So we went to see recently Despicable Me 4, but we saw it in Denver in a 4DX.
So jealous.
4DX films allow films to be augmented with various practical effects, including motion seats, wind, strobe lights, simulated snow, rain, and smells. So yes, smells. and they definitely play that up as well. So, and obviously you've done things like this in amusement parks where there might be like a 5-minute, 10-minute ride where the seats move you around, but no, this is a full experience through the entire movie. So,
wow.
And I thought it would just be like subtle movements here and there, but no. The movie starts out with a car driving through a mountain road at high speed, and literally you're holding on to the seat because you're being thrown all over the place. And again, wind blowing as you're flying through the sky or driving fast, all kinds of different things with rain and snow, like I said, and strobe lights and smoke.
Wow.
And the scents, like they go into garbage area, and they're definitely using smells for
smell garbage. That's so cool.
It really drew you into the movie even more, which for me was awesome because just like with board gaming, I love the experiential sights, sounds, everything to draw you in even more. And Return to Dark Tower, very much that way. And this movie in 4DX, I was drawn in and sucked into the movie even more. So
that's cool. I've never actually been to a 4DX movie, so that would be really cool. I'll have to do that at some point in my lifetime. But
it's definitely it's like $22 a ticket, at least here.
Right. That's a lot. But hey, it's worth it for that one-time experience, though, I would say.
And other than doing like amusement parks, it was my first like full feature-length movie experience with 4DX. So,
okay.
I loved it. I will try to always do it when possible.
Awesome. Well, that is going to be our conversation for today. Thank you all for listening. Of course, if you liked what you just heard, feel free to subscribe to us on YouTube and hit that bell notification for then you can know when we release new videos. If you want to follow our show, you can do that at Roll and Reflect or at Roll and Reflect Podcast. And a few special shout outs here. We have Sean. Thank you so much for the reflection question. And of course, Laura again for the timestamps. And lastly, High Rollers, we love you. Thank you all so much for listening. We have been getting some good followers and downloads. I'd love to see that. And we're just going to keep creating amazing content for you. So until next time, may your games be legendary
and your rolls be epic.
We'll see ya. Bye.
Later.